The infamous Federal Reserve, the privately owned banking cartel that is in control of America's currency and financial system, was born out of a secret meeting held by a handful of banking elite on a secluded island off the coast of Georgia in 1910. Under the cover of going on a hunting trip, a small group of men met on Jekyll Island for a week and a half to draft what would later be passed into law through a clever and sneaky tactic of voting on their plan on December 23rd, 1913, the eve of Christmas Eve, while almost every congressman was at home with their families for Christmas, thus slipping the Federal Reserve Act into law. While the Federal Reserve sounds like a department of the United States government, it is actually a conglomerate of privately owned banks who dictate America's monetary policy, and as the saying goes, those with the gold make the rules. Just as the elite Illuminati have secretly maneuvered themselves to control both political parties in the American government, along with the world's resources, infrastructure, and media through their business monopolies, of course they planned and successfully accomplished the takeover of the financial system as well, and are now in charge of printing the money. The Jekyll Island meeting included executives from the major banks, such as the Rockefeller family associate Frank Vanderlip, who is the president of National City Bank of New York, Henry Davidson of J.P. Morgan, Charles Norton, president of the First National Bank of New York, Paul Warburg of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, and Colonel Edward House, one of the founding members of the Council on Foreign Relations. The plan they put together would later be presented to Senator Nelson Aldrich, whose daughter was married to John D. Rockefeller Jr., who then presented it to Congress, where it became known as the Aldrich Plan. Paul Warburg later admitted, quote, "The matter of a uniform discount rate, the interest rate, was discussed and settled at Jekyll Island," end quote. Frank Vanderlip, who worked for the Rockefellers and attended the Jekyll Island meeting, would later admit in his autobiography that, quote, "discovery we knew simply must not happen, or else our time and effort would be wasted. If it were to be exposed publicly that our particular group had gotten together and written a banking bill, that bill would have no chance whatsoever of passage by Congress." I'm reading to you an excerpt from my new book, Inside the Illuminati, Evidence, Objectives, and Methods of Operation, available now on Amazon.com in paperback or downloaded onto any tablet from any e-reading device, Kindle, iBooks, Google Play, Nook, etc. You will not be disappointed. I'll continue reading a little bit of an excerpt here just to give you a sample of some of the pieces of the puzzle that I have assembled in this book in my now over 10 years of research. Congressman Ron Paul wrote in his book, And the Fed, quote, "A secret meeting was convened at the coastal Georgia resort called the Jekyll Island Club, co-owned by J.P. Morgan himself. The press said it was a duck hunting expedition. Those who attended took elaborate steps to preserve their secrecy, but history recorded precisely who was there. John D. Rockefeller's man in the Senate, Nelson Aldrich, Morgan senior partner Henry Davidson, German immigrant and central banking advocate Paul Warburg, National City Bank Vice President Frank Vanderlip, and others, etc., etc. William Grieder, author of the New York Times best-selling book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, mostly dismisses what he calls, quote, conspiracy-minded accusations, but does admit that, quote, their suspicions were poetically accurate. The bankers met secretly because they knew that any proposal identified as Wall Street's bill would be doomed in the House of Representatives. Those who own the banking system have a tremendous amount of power in their hands because those who control the issuance of currency have the ability to create money out of nothing, declare its legal tender, and then loan it out to people or the government, and then collect interest on the money they lent out. It's the perfect scam because the earning of money by building something or delivering packages or raising livestock or any number of other ways people earn a living requires actual work. But the banksters have cleverly positioned themselves into a place where they take in a massive amount of money for basically doing nothing other than acting as the self-proclaimed sole authority on money itself. Once you wrap your mind around what it means to create money out of nothing and loan it out at interest, you can realize just how monumental this scam is. The president of the Bank of England and the second richest man in Britain in the 1920s, Sir Josiah Stamp, is reportedly to have revealed, quote, "The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in and born in sin. Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave the power to create money with the flick of a pen. They will create enough to buy it back again. Take this great power away from them, and all great fortunes like mine will disappear. For then this world will be better and a happier world to live in. But if you want to continue to be the slaves of the bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, then let bankers continue to create money and control credit." In 1816, Thomas Jefferson wrote to his longtime friend John Taylor thanking him for sending a copy of his book, An Inquiry into the Principles and Policy of the Government of the United States, published in 1814. Jefferson concluded his letter by saying, quote, "And I sincerely believe with you that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity, meaning future generations, under the name of funding is but swindling futurity, meaning the future, on a large scale." End quote. Abraham Lincoln reportedly believed that instead of private banks having this power, quote, "the government should create, issue, and circulate all currency and credit needed to satisfy the spending power of the government and the buying power of consumers. The privilege of creating and issuing money is not only the supreme prerogative of the government, but is the government's greatest creative opportunity." He goes on to say, "By the adoption of these principles, the long-felt want for a uniform medium will be satisfied. The taxpayers will be saved immense sums of interest, discounts, and exchanges. The financing of all public enterprises, the maintenance and of stable governments and ordered progress, and the conduct of the Treasury will become matters of practical administration. The people can and will be furnished with a currency as safe as their own government. Money will cease to be the master and become the servant of humanity." The Federal Reserve Bank is working with other central banks around the world to incrementally introduce regional currencies in different areas of the world by merging several currencies into one, taking America off the gold standard in 1972 and continuing to run up the national debt. Is the bankers' plan to inflate the United States dollar to the point of worthlessness, forcing it to be replaced with a new regional currency, or even bypassing that step and moving right past it to a global currency? The saying goes that the love of money is the root of all evil, and that root leads directly to the Federal Reserve banksters and the globalist financial mafia. Again, this is an excerpt from my book, Inside the Illuminati. Pick it up right now in paperback from Amazon.com or download it onto any e-reading device. Over 300 pages, many pieces of the puzzle that you will never see, that have never really been disclosed much on YouTube or in the online conspiracy community. Pick it up now and you will not be disappointed. I'll just finish reading a little bit more from this section. World-renowned economist John Maynard Keynes, whose philosophies are known as Keynesian economics, wrote in his book, The Economic Consequences of Peace, that, quote, "Lenin is said to have declared that the best way to destroy the capitalist system was to debauch the currency. By the continuous process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of wealth of their citizens. There is no subtler, more surer means of overthrowing the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction and does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose. In the Bible, it's written in John chapter 2, verse 15, that Jesus not only denounced the money changers at the temple, but he actually tipped over their tables and used a whip to chase them away. Quote, so he made a whip out of cords and drove them from the temple courts. Both sheep and cattle, he scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. In the 2,000 years since then, the corrupt money changers and tax collectors have only grown more powerful through their sneaky tactics and have continued to systematically turn most people into peasants or debt slaves. As Proverbs 22 verse 7 reads, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender."